Well, for a closer look at China's economic ties with the UK, I spoke with Stephen Perry, chairman of the 48 Group Club and a regular writer and commentator on developments in China. I asked him how concerned Chinese investors should be about Brexit and a potential change in British leadership.
I don't think people should worry too much. The British economy is probably about the 5th largest in the world. We're pretty stable. Our currency is fairly stable and our institutions are pretty good, the rule of law. We're a pretty open economy. So when people look at Brexit and our separation from the European Union in a formal sense, I think they can expect that we'll still have a close trading relationship with Europe, and we'll probably be open to a more adventurous relationship with nations like China, which are going to be writing the script for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So if I was Chinese investors looking around the world, I would still feel pretty confident about the UK. Not if I was planning to build a car plant for export to Europe. That may not be the order of the day right now, but you know, it's a short hop from Britain over to Europe, and I think we'll be doing a lot of business with them.
So then what do you see as the biggest benefits and challenges when it comes to China dealing with the UK individually as opposed to being part of the broader EU bloc?
Well, I think, you know, you're right. There's a lot that goes on, whether we're in Europe or outside Europe. There are a lot of things that nations do in their bilateral relations. And the key of the growth of the Sino-British relationship is probably the fact that we're both members of the Security Council, of the permanent members of the Security Council. And therefore, I think both nations take seriously their responsibility to the world around them to try and find peaceful resolutions to conflicts and to enable sustainable development. But you go from that into the more commercial economic field. I think that as you go forward with Britain outside Brexit, it's a greater opportunity for China to work with Britain on a bilateral basis to define the way in which they want to trade and invest with Britain without having to worry about the rules and regulations of Brussels. So I think in general it's probably good news for China.
Now, recently, the Chinese ambassador to Britain called this the golden era for relations between China and the UK, and also highlighted a lot of the mutual benefits and the complementary nature of trade between the two countries, especially in the light of the Belt and Road Initiative. What do you think makes China such a natural trade partner for the UK?
Well, you know, I guess one of our main strengths is financial services, which goes all the way through to law and insurance and other features of financial services. And China is probably looking to buy into particularly our ability to enable the RMB to internationalize. We've got very good bond markets, equity markets, and it's a good place for China as it goes through the next 10 or 20 years of expanding its activities into the field of its own currency. You go beyond that and we're a good country to invest in. We've got high levels of technology. We've got a lot of companies that would be very interested in partnering with Chinese partners to access the China market. And we've got a great deal of access that's allowed into our infrastructure. And China's particularly strong in infrastructure. So I think in those areas, they're the ones that were being looked at before Brexit happened. Brexit coincides with the Belt and Road Forum in Beijing. BRI is the parts of the world stretching from the Pacific to the Atlantic and down south into Africa and the Middle East. It's a phenomenal opening up project, which is unprecedented in history. Probably will last the whole of this century and will transform the trading world as we know it. It's going to be the main source of global growth. And so for Britain, it's an amazing opportunity. I think the British, as with many other nations, are finding it a little bit difficult at this stage to understand the scale and scope of BRI. I've been following it for 4 years myself, so I've probably got a better sense of it than most, but it's vast, it's complex. It's spreading through Pakistan and ASEAN more at the moment than over to the west, but the rail lines are already running, maybe at normal speeds, into Europe. And I think the developments and the opportunities are beyond what most people's imagination. So if you take the opportunity of transnational trade and investment and green financing, these are relatively new concepts which are going to play into British strengths. We're always at ease with the new and the innovative ways of doing business. And I think you'll find our banks, particularly HSBC, will be leaders in the world of green financing. And I think you'll find our legal structures very helpful in working out a Silk Road law and dispute resolution throughout the areas. And I think China and countries along the way will find the British to be a good third partner in deals that require a great deal of professionalism, a great deal of expertise, but also an ability to work the cultural differences that inevitably will occur in something that crosses 60 nations. So I'm pretty optimistic about the British opportunity in BRI.